Zooey Mama! I'm here today to talk about Speed and why I actually think he's going to be a pretty good card. So through this video, I'm going to go over Speed's best synergies, his pros, his cons. I'll give you 3 deck ideas, and then I'll give my final ratings and review on Speed, as well as this Spotlight week, because on August 20th, he's coming out alongside Jeff and Iron Lad. Now, just a heads up, at the time of filming, I'm about a week earlier than I normally would be because I'm about to leave on a trip, end up at SnapCon when this video comes out. So if any of these card stats or cards I show in the decks later have changed in the latest OTA, I apologize. I was not aware of it at the time of filming. But Speed is a 3-cost, 3-powered card with the ongoing ability plus 1 power for each turn in which you spent all of your energy. So if it's a 6-turn game and you spent all of your energy on all 6 turns, Speed will be a 3-9. If you only spent all of your energy on, let's say, 2 of the 6 turns, then Speed would be a 3-5. Okay, but he is ongoing, so it doesn't matter if you get him down on turn 3 or turn 6. Either way, he's just looking at the total number of turns in that game that you spent all of your energy. First up, for some of Speed's best synergies, we are looking at Kate Bishop, the current Season Pass card. Kate's really good. First of all, you can play her on 2 and then Speed into 3 if that's how your curve is looking. But then when Kate gives you the arrows, they're these nice, flexible 1-cost cards. So let's say it's turn 4 and you only have a bunch of 3-cost cards in your hand. Well, you can play a 3-cost plus an arrow, okay? Or if you have a 4-cost, you can go ahead and play that. Maybe on turn 5, you need to play a 4-cost plus an arrow, or a 3-cost plus 2 arrows. Like, these arrows can really help you just fill out the gaps in your curve. And anytime you fill out a gap, you're essentially getting just plus 1 power from it if you do end up playing Speed. In that same vein, we have Kitty Pryde. Now, Kitty Pryde's great because, yes, she can be your turn 1 play. I don't think you need to run Quicksilver, okay? I don't think you're super desperate to make sure you get every turn like Wiccan, where you need to get every turn. But if you get Kitty Pryde down turn 1, that's great. And then later on, again, she can just fill out your curve. Even if your opponent's like being annoying and playing a clog deck, or board space is really hard, Kitty Pryde keeps coming back to hand and taking up that same space. So it's kind of nice. You can keep spending energy without having to fill your board up too early, which is sometimes difficult. And then lastly, a card like Spectrum's just going to be good. Okay, Speed's an ongoing. He's a 3-cost card, so he's going to get buffed up by Spectrum. He'd get power up by Silver Surfer if you want to play him in a Surfer deck. He just has nice homes there if you are going for that kind of thing. And then in terms of locations that could be good, well, you like drawing. With Speed decks, you actually like drawing a bit more than a normal card because, again, you really want to fill out your curve. So if your draws are bad, Speed becomes extra worse, okay? Because if your hand's bad, which already kind of sucks, then Speed is less likely to get his power buff, so it's going to suck even more. So having something to just help out that consistency gives you extra benefit when you're playing a card like Speed, and you're likely playing with tempo. You're trying to fill out most of your turns, more or less, and that will help out with tempo locations like Castle Blackstone, so very similar to Wiccan in that vein, where you often will have nice early leads, so you don't mind these kind of early game focused locations. Now look at some cards that you probably do not want to see if you're playing a deck with Speed in it. First up, we've got Iceman. Okay, Speed's counters are pretty similar to Wiccan. Something that's going to mess with your hand is going to feel really bad. I mean, let's say you have Kate Bishop to play on turn 2. Your opponent hits her with Iceman. She's now a 3-cost. Maybe now you miss your turn 2. That could hurt even your future turns. I mean, Iceman is just doing extra damage to a Speed deck. Same thing with Black Widow. This can also be, Rock Slide or Korg. If you're drawing rocks, they can be used to, maybe fill in a curve, but oftentimes it means you're going to miss out on maybe a bigger cost card. So come around to turn 4 or 5, if your hand is pretty empty, it may just be hard to spend all of your energy. And so that hurts you a little bit extra if you're trying to get Speed's power up. And then lastly, this one's kind of counterintuitive. I actually have Magic in here. Now, Speed essentially gets plus 6 power max if it's a 6-turn game. If the game is 7 turns, he could technically get plus 7 power. But I actually think if you see magic come down from your opponent, you're not happy about it if you're playing speed, okay? Because while you do, yes, technically have an extra turn to power speed up, that's not usually what happens, okay? If you have a deck that's built for 6 turns, it's built for 6 turns. You try to play a nice steady curve, get your combo or big play down on turn 6, you know, fill it out, that's the last turn. When your opponent plays magic and you have a deck that normally only goes to turn 6, well, you actually have to slow down your plays a bit, okay? If you have a combo deck, you might have to actually slow down your combo and wait to play it on turn 7, which means you might float energy on turn 6, and turn 7 you might only spend 6 energy and float there. Now to look at the good and the bad for speed, we will start with the good in that he has a ceiling of 9 power with no downside. Okay, that's good. That's great, honestly. I mean, Gladiator's a 3/8. Gladiator has an upside if you're playing a mill deck where you want to get rid of something in your opponent's deck, but sometimes it's not good, okay? Sometimes Gladiator pulls something bigger than himself, and then you just gave your opponent like a free 6-cost card on the board. He has a bit of risk. Speed doesn't have risk. Okay, he doesn't have some huge downside, and in fact, you can play him on any turn. So when we think of 3-cost cards that get big power, we've got Gladiator, who has risk. We've got Sage, but Sage you want to play as late as possible so she can get as big as possible. So Sage doesn't work well on turn 3. Okay, she doesn't work on curve. Speed you can play on turn 3. He's fine. He's an ongoing. He'll power up later. Cassandra Nova you want on turn 3. On turn 6 is kind of bad. With Speed, you can play on turn 6 if you need to, because he's an ongoing. He's still going to count for all the previous turns. So the fact that he can get big, he has no just huge, possibly negative downside. Okay, he's not super risky, and you can play him on any turn, actually makes him a very, very flexible 3-cost stat stick. He is an ongoing, and normally ongoing cards will just get wrecked by Rogue. Okay, imagine like Iron Man, you know, you lose your Iron Man and then your opponent's Rogue gains the Iron Man effect. You just played a 5/0, does nothing, and your opponent is now doubling up the power of their location. You get completely destroyed by Rogue. With Speed, if you get hit by Rogue or Enchantress, you know, he's still a 3/3. That's not horrible. He's not going down to like 0 power. It's not like when, you know, Sage gets hit by Shadow King. And if your opponent did hit you with Rogue, they're probably not getting max power out of Speed's ability because you have a deck that's maybe built for spending all of your energy every turn, but your opponent likely doesn't. He does seem to just be a better version of the Punisher. I mean, the Punisher is a 3/3, just like Speed, who's an ongoing that can go up to a 3/7, while Speed can go up to a 3/9. And obviously, with Punisher, your opponent could see which lane he's on and try to avoid that lane depending on what kind of deck they're playing that may be feasible or not. But he's only going up to 7 power. Well, Speed's an ongoing that just goes up to 9. I mean, he's just bigger than the Punisher, and the Punisher was actually in the meta just a few months ago in like a Spectrum ongoing deck. The Punisher was seeing real play, and Speed is just better. He's just better than the Punisher. In terms of the downsides of Speed, well, first of all, it is inconsistent. You just don't know at the start of the game, is Speed going to be a 3/8? Is he going to be a 3/7? Okay, when putting him in your deck, you're just unsure, and that's not great. You do want nice, consistent cards most of the time. The effect is also a bit of a win more. If your draws are really good, then Speed is more likely to have more power because you're going to be playing on curve because your draws were good. Okay, you might even have the perfect curve, and that's great. But when your draws are bad, Speed feels even worse. Okay, so you're already maybe a bit behind, and the Speed with his reduced power because you missed some draws, you missed some plays, you might now actually be farther behind. He's not going to help you catch up. Okay, so he might just work well in games where you're already going to win anyways and you don't really need him. It doesn't matter if this is Speed or Cassandra Nova or Gladiator in this 3-cost spot. And I do think it's going to be hard to get to 9 power, even if you have a deck that's, you know, somewhat built for him. I don't think you need to play Quicksilver or Domino, but we know Red Hulk is good because people float energy. Okay, there are turns, even if your deck has a card for every turn, you don't draw perfectly most games, and so you're going to float energy. This is why Red Hulk powers up, and that's going to prevent Speed from hitting his ceiling all the time. And then he's a 3-cost card That's tough. Okay, that really is. I mentioned Gladiator, I mentioned Cassandra Nova, but there are just some really good 3-cost cards in the game. We have Nocturne, we have Red Guardian, we have Copycat, we have Sage. I mean, there are just so many. Here's my friendly reminder to give this video a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because in addition to covering every single new card release in Marvel Snap, we also provide a variety of resources on this channel to help you plan out how you're going to use your very precious Spotlight keys and collector's tokens. Now to talk about Speed's floor and his ceiling. So Speed at his floor, or his reasonable worst, I think it's that he's only getting +2 power. Okay, I don't think it's reasonable for Speed to just have +0 power and just be a 3/3. I don't think you ever see that. There's not like any game where you float energy every single turn. Okay, that's very difficult to do, honestly. That would be hard to actually play cards and not spend all of your energy on at least 2 turns. So I think at worst he's a 3/5, which that's a pretty good floor. I mean, it's viable. It's honestly competitive. Like, you're adding 5 power to the board. That's not a bad thing at all. Okay, that's solid. Now on the flip side, while his floor is pretty good, he doesn't have the highest ceiling. Okay, his ceiling is that he's getting +6 power. Okay, again, technically he could be getting +7 if you are in a 7-turn game, if Magic came down or if Limbo was on the board, but I don't think that's likely. I don't think you're playing him alongside Magic, and with Magic on turn 7 it is actually hard to spend all of that energy. So I think his reasonable ceiling, the one you see the most, is that he's a 3/9. Okay, when it's a 6-turn game and you have a perfect curve, he is a 3/9. That's good. I wouldn't say it's overpowered, actually. I mean, I think it's a fine ceiling, but it's definitely not crazy. A lot of cards, again, have this ceiling where they could be the best card in the game if they're hitting this ceiling often. That's not Speed, okay? He does not have the highest ceiling. He also doesn't have the lowest floor, though. So on average, where is he? Well, I think he's somewhere between a 3/6 and a 3/8. Okay, depending on what deck you're playing, because again, I don't think you need to force it. And depending on how your draws go, if your draws are kind of weaker, then he's going to end up in a 3/6, even if your deck is built with him kind of in mind. If your draws are solid, I think he's a 3/8. Again, I think often you miss turn 1, okay, and I think that's okay. I don't think you expect to fill in turn 1 every time. I don't think you put Quicksilver in your deck just to give him that +1 power. It's not worth it. So I think he's going to be in the range of 3/6 to 3/8, but again, there's no downside, okay? He doesn't have the risk of Gladiator or anything. You can play him on turn 3 or on turn 6, whatever you want. And it's just, fairly small range, a bit inconsistent, but he's going to have decent power. So the first deck I've got for Speed is this Tempo Lockdown list, where, yes, we have some 1-drops in here. Okay, we've got Nebula, we've got Hydra Bob. These are 1-cost cards that are also just adding good power. And then we're slapping down either White Widow or Kate Bishop. Kate Bishop, we love those arrows to help fill out our curve if needed. Turn 3, we can go with Storm, who's going to be good on top of the Nebula lane. We could have Hydra Bob jumping in there, or do Storm on top of the White Widow and Widow's Kiss lane. Miss Marvel can add power to that locked down flooded Storm lane. Captain Marvel can move in if needed. Claw can add power there. Doctor Doom can add power there. I mean, you're looking really good for winning the flooded lane from Storm, and you really just need to focus on winning one other lane. At that point, this deck just has a nice, steady curve, so Speed should end up as a 3/7, 3/8 in here at most times, I think. And again, the Kate Bishop, her arrows are really going to help out. Let's say turn 5, you didn't draw a Claw. You can slap down an Iron Lad or Captain Marvel plus one of those arrows. Second deck I've got for Speed, it's just this good stuff deck. Okay, I mentioned Kitty Pryde earlier. She's going to be so crucial in here because you've got her triggering with Athena, triggering with Angela, and Elsa Bloodstone. You have the arrows from Kate again. So we're going to have no problem once we get to turn 2 and forward, just filling out our curve. Probably every turn, maybe on turn 5 or 6 we float another energy, but this should put Speed at about a 3/7. Okay, he does feel still kind of replaceable here with maybe a Cassandra Nova, but because he can come down later, you can look to just play Elsa or Hope Summers right on turn 3, instead of needing to, get Cassandra Nova out right on turn. And so you can then play those cards, either Hope or Elsa turn 3, and just drop speed later on. Maybe you play speed on turn 6 with a discounted Sasquatch and or Mockingbird. And this last deck is a Spectrum ongoing list. Again, speed is ongoing. He's going to get a nice buff from Spectrum. If he's getting, let's say, to 3-9, that would be great. Even if he just gets a 3-8, Spectrum's going to put him at a 3-10. Okay, that's just a nice, solid power line. Again, we have some 1 cost in here. If we miss the 1 cost, that's fine. It's not a big deal. We're going to get going by turn 2 with either Mojo, US Agent, or Lizard. Got a couple 3s in here. Turn 4, playing Man-Thing or Omega Red. Turn 5 is another one where you got to mix and match. Maybe you float an energy if the draws are bad. But that's still looking at speed with being a 3-7. Once Spectrum hits, put him at a 3-9, even if you didn't have the best curve. To break down this Spotlight week, we've got speed with Jeff and Iron Lad on August 20th. Now, in terms of the token value, it's great value. This is becoming the standard because there are just so many Series 5 cards in Snap right now. It's ridiculous. So, yes, these are all Series 5. They're probably never dropping down. At least Jeff and Iron Lad, they've been Series 5 like forever. So, we'll see there, but it is good token value in that sense. In terms of being competitive, we don't know how Speed's going to do, okay? So putting him to the side, we're just looking at Jeff and Iron Lad. Iron Lad is fine. He's okay. He's actually seeing a little bit of play right now because Patriot is back in the meta and Patriot Sandman is kind of going around right now. But Jeff is just amazing, okay? Jeff is S tier for your collection, so this is a great opportunity. If you do not have Jeff, this is a great opportunity for you. Okay, this is going to be a good week. And Iron Lad is fine too. Okay, you can get value out of him, but really Jeff is the one carrying the Spotlight week for me. In terms of the variants, I think these are amazing. Okay, this speed one is my favorite new variant of the whole season, of the whole month. Okay, this is the Flaviano Spotlight variant, and I love it. The colors are amazing. I'm excited to see how it looks animated, if these little kind of bubbly cloud looking things are moving a lot or the colors in the back are shifting a lot. It's going to look amazing. This Jeff one, that's his Max Grek variant. I'm liking this one too. Okay, I like the reflection in the water. You see the teeth. He's got the rubber duckies, so he's cute but menacing at the same time. Great variant here. And even this Iron Lad one isn't bad. We've got the little robot Jeff. I mean, that's just cute. Who doesn't love that? So honestly, very competitive Spotlight week. Great set of variants. I have this as my best, most valuable Spotlight week of the whole season. So to give my final predictions and ratings for Speed. In terms of being fun, no. I don't think he's fun. Okay, listen. He's a stat stick. It's that simple. He is just a stat stick. His floor is high, his ceiling is low. Okay, so he doesn't have a huge range, and that can be good for consistency, but he's going to be boring. He's not some big RNG machine like Airshim. He's not doing something crazy every game. He doesn't have the potential to do something wild like, Nocturne, switching over to location and, makes it some game-changing location. No, he's very straightforward and simple, so he's boring. It is what it is. In terms of being flexible, he's pretty flexible. Again, you don't need to commit to a perfect curve deck. It's not like Wiccan. You don't need to commit to Quicksilver, Domino, and make sure you've spent all your energy every turn. You don't have to do that. You can just play like normal and assume you have a deck where you could reasonably fill out your curve, spend all your energy on at least 4 turns, and he's at a 3-7. Okay, he's going to be decent that way. So because you don't have to commit, or you could commit a bit if you want to, he can fit into a variety of decks. And again, he's just a stat stick. He doesn't require a ton of specific synergy. Now, in terms of being competitive, this is one where I think a lot of people are writing him off because he is boring and he's simple. But I think he's good. He's a good card. Okay, he's going to be a 3-7, 3-8, 3-9 with no downside. Like, that is simply good. Is it amazing? No. Is it meta breaking, meta changing, meta defining? No. Is he building new decks or archetypes? No, because he's boring. We've covered that. Okay, and is he replaceable? Sure. Right? Even with Cassandra Nova would be pretty close in terms of just power, although Cassandra you kind of have to get down on turn 3. But he's just a good card. Like, if you have him, you're not going to be upset. If you're playing a deck with him in it, he's going to give you good value. But while I think he's a good card, I think it's probably a skip, okay? And here's the thing, and many of you know this, you know, I've seen people say he's one of those that's like, why is this a Series 5 card? He's got such a simple, boring stat stick ability. He's never going to be the best card in the game. And while I do think he's good, he is replaceable. And what if we just get another stat stick in a month or two, another 3-cost stat stick that can come down on turn 3, 4, 5, or 6 and just have similar power? He just gets replaced too early. I mean, that's what happens to most stat sticks unless they get really out of hand power, like just crazy strong, like Red Hulk. Okay, most stat sticks just get replaced because that's all they are. They're not doing something unique. You know, they're not making a perfect spot in a deck that if you didn't have that card, there's no good replacement. No, if speed finds homes in a deck or 2 decks or 3 decks, if you don't have speed, you're going to be able to replace him in those decks with something else. Whether it's Cassandra Nova, whether it's Gladiator, whether it's just like the Punisher, okay? You're going to find cards that can come in and do a job similar to his. You know, resources are tough. 6,000 tokens are committing to a Spotlight Cash, especially if you do already own these other cards here in Jeff and Iron Lad. It's just a big commitment for a pretty simple, boring card, even if he's going to be fairly competitive, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts on speed. Those are my thoughts on whether he's actually worth chasing after, even if he is competitive or not. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you think speed is going to be strong or not, and if you think he's going to be worth chasing after with your Spotlight keys, with 6,000 collector's tokens. Let me know your thoughts. And until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.